Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I'm so Ray. My videos are about love, infinity, creation, because we're infinite love, infinite energy, infinite creation. This is who we are. This is our nature as a species. I've been making a lot of videos lately about infinite virtuous cycles. These are the cycles that originate as a result of duality principles, because two elements come together as one because of the polarity of them. They just generate this electromagnetic relationship that leads to a singularity and an infinite cycle, a virtuous infinite cycle. So you need those two that would come as one to generate this infinite virtuous cycle. And the infinite virtuous cycle that I'm referring to today is electrogravitics and telemetry. This beautiful relationship that comes as a result of these two occurrences in nature, in existence, in infinity, in creation. And they are everywhere. These two elements, they come together as one, and they pretty much create everything that we know in terms of on so many levels. So it's electrogravitics and telemetry coming together as one. Okay, so let's understand what these are then. So what's electrogravitics and what's telemetry? Okay, so let's start with the one that leads to the other one, and then the other one reinforces the other one, because there's always one that tends to be the first. So they follow each other. So they kind of happen as a result of these dynamics that I'm about to explain. So everything starts because of duality in any way. Our existence, our reality is based on duality. Duality principles. These are fundamental principles of existence. And our reality, as we know it, infinity, spherical energy, consciousness and self-awareness, love, these are all the result of electromagnetism, polarity, charge, energy, electrogravitics, telemetry. All these result, what happens as a result, gravity, all these different things that happen are the result of the duality nature, these two that come together as one. So they two come together as one, and they create a charge, electromagnetism, polarity, and energy. And this is electrogravitic in nature, and there's telemetry in it. So okay, so let's start with electrogravitics. So what's electrogravitics? Well, electrogravitics is a phenomena that results, that occurs as a result of electromagnetism, okay, and polarity. So because reality is spherical in nature, the creation itself, it's spherical in nature. Everything that is conscious and self-aware and has the ability to love is spherical in nature. So, for example, in our case, we have an electromagnetic field, and our electromagnetic field comes as a result of the pulse of life, the pulse of creation, which is the human heartbeat. You see this resonance, this pulse, right? This oscillation, right, which is the human heartbeat that comes from the human heart. Our biological creator is the human heart, because that's just the way our DNA structure evolved. So if you understand this, and you understand that this pulse, right, there's a pulse, and this pulse is our heartbeat, right? And that pulse generates an electromagnetic field. But how is it that this can generate an electromagnetic field, which is essentially the light spherical energy that is encompassing our space structure density, which is our body? So it surrounds our body, you see. And at the singularity, the epicenter of it is this resonance, this pulse, this heartbeat. So it needs a polarity, so it needs a charge, right? Positive and negative. For that to occur as a result, because it's the polarity of the sphere, right? The polarities at the axis of it, yeah? is positive and negative, those two charges coming together as one. And when they come together, this motion generates that electromagnetic field as a result, because it's a spin, it's a singularity at the epicenter, which is the pulse itself that generates it. But what is it that generates that? So you see, because of the heartbeat, well, it's the contraction and the diacetyl. There's two names of it that we give it in anatomy. They don't come to mind at the moment, but there's these two that pump the pulse. So that pulse is a result of the contraction and the retraction. Contraction, retraction, meaning, that pulse, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. So that is positive, negative, positive, negative. The release, that's it. You see, that's the polarity. And by creating that condition, that polarity as a result of the pulse, because then they gain, a life of its own, the heartbeat, as a result of that in, out, contraction, retraction, contraction, retraction, contraction, retraction, contraction, retraction, all these. As a result of these, you see, that's it, the positive and the negative, the positive and the negative, the energy goes out, the energy comes in. That is a polarity, right? And when it creates that leads, the movement itself is that electromagnetism that comes as a result of that polarity. So you see, the polarity you need to be is a charge. It's a charge, and we call it biochemistry at the biological level of the human heart. So that energy, that's it. You see, that's the polarity, duality principles, positive and negative charges. So you see, contraction, retraction, contraction, retraction, contraction, retraction, contraction, retraction. So that's it. That pulse that generates the vacuum. You see, it's a vacuum that gets filled in, right? The heart, right? It gets filled in. Releases, contracts, right? The vacuum gets filled in, and then it goes out. So it's an infinite pulse, and it's electromagnetic in nature, okay, because of the pulse, because of the polarity of it. So if you understand this, you see, that's it, and that's the polarity of the human heart, and that leads to that electromagnetic field that comes as a result of that sustaining over time, being constant. The constant pulse, the constant heartbeat, that rate, at that constant rate, because it contracts and reacts, it has a positivity and negativity interacting, and that interaction leads to a charge that is electromagnetic in nature. And because of the nature and the resonance of the human heart and the shape of it and everything about it, its full makeup, it just generates the electromagnetic field that is spherical in nature. Yeah, like spheres are, they have polarity, and that pulse leads to that electromagnetism that essentially generates that electromagnetic field of the human body. Okay, so that's just our scale, so you understand it at our biological scale. So because of that, because of this very nature, that leads to that electromagnetism, which is electricity, really, is current, is signaling, We're all electrical. Everything about us is energy. And what's the highest energy that we generate at the singularity of because that's the singularity, that sustenance, what happens, that pulse that just maintains itself over time, that rhythm, right? That is energy. That just the system keeps going. Okay, and that is because of the electromagnetism that was generated because of the vacuum being filled, which is when the heart gets filled for the first time, right? And that is the energy, right? That fills the vacuum. That momentum generates that first singularity, and then it just goes in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, oxygen in, oxygen out, oxygen in, oxygen out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And oxygen is fuel, right? It's energy. So it's all this biochemistry happening because of this energy system that is just going, it's live. Okay, two, right? And that's a pulse. So it goes, and that, because it sustains itself because of that electromagnetism, because of the polarity of the contraction and the retraction, in, out. All right, so it's a polarity. You need a charge that generates that tension, that singularity at the epicenter that leads to the vacuum being filled, that spherical vacuum threshold being met. In this case, the first time that the heart gets filled, and when that happens, it just becomes this, and this the first singularity, right? Originates at the epicenter, and that is electromagnetic in nature. So electromagnetism is that, and you can see that observed at every scale of infinity, and it always starts as a result of the charges, the duality principles that lead to the electromagnetism because of the spherical nature of it, and because of it, it happens, right? It happens. And then what happens as a result of the electromagnetism and the resonance and all the vibration and the frequency? Well, there is electrogravitics as a result of that. What is electrogravitics? Well, electrogravitics is all the phenomena, electric phenomena, that originates as a result of the magnetism, right? Of the magnetism. What magnetism? Well, the attraction of the opposite charges. Because it's magnetism, right? Magnetism is something that attracts, it magnetizes, right? It's a magnet because it's energy charges, right? That come together and create a force field. Because of what? Because of the electricity of the poles that creates that electromagnetic field that surrounds the human body, okay? In this case, at this scale. So because of it, that, you see all the electric phenomena that originates from the magnetism of the charge, and that electrical phenomena has it results in gravitics. And what's gravitics? Well, the gravitics is all the occurrence due to the gravitational tension on the surface of the electromagnetic field, because of the magnetism of it, right? Because of the electricity, the current has a charge, and when it spins, because of the poles, that electromagnetism, right? Because it goes this way and this way, creates that energy, that electricity, and that electricity, of course, because of the magnetism, and that electricity leads to gravitics, which is all the phenomena that occurs as a result of the tension on the sphere of the electromagnetic field. Because the electromagnetic field has a surface of its own, right? It's the surface of the electromagnetic field, which is a sphere. So it has tension on it. It has all this energy, all this charge, all this current, right, at different levels of at different energy densities. Okay, so that is part of the sphere, is on the surface of the sphere, and it's all this tension, all these tensors, that's what it calls in physics. So all that energy is the tension on the sphere, right, of the electromagnetic field, which is spherical in nature, and that is the is gravity, space curvature as we know it, is that energy, the tension on the sphere that results as a polarity of the charges when the electromagnetic electromagnetic motions start to occur. They spin like this and they spin like this because of the charges, two charges, but one goes like this, the other one goes like this. So because of that is generating that electricity, that power, that energy, and that electricity is on the surface of the sphere. In this case, the electromagnetic field, the spherical electromagnetic field of the human body, say, the heartbeat. And that is electric in nature because it's power, it's energy, right? That is powered by the singularity at the epicenter. The singularity at the epicenter. The pulse of life, the pulse of creation, in this case, the human heartbeat, right? But at the cosmological scale, we say will be the sun. And at universal scale, our central sun. So it's a singularity right there that generates the first movement. So the electromagnetism results because of the polarity, because of the charges meeting, because of the tension of the electromagnetic field that leads to that vortex that just keeps going with the poles. because it feeds itself from the tension on the surface of its own electromagnetic field because of the motion, the perpetual motion of that singularity, because it's being fed by the energy and the tension of the sphere of the electromagnetic field that originated in that singularity because of the tension being released. So that tension on the surface, the gravitics of it is, that's what gravitics is. The gravitics is the tension on the surface, all the charges on the surface as a result of the motions of electromagnetism because of polarity and charges. It's electrical in nature, so electrogravitics. So it's electrical phenomena due to gravitational phenomena that originates on the tension on the surface of the sphere because of the electricity. So it's a gravitics, meaning is all the phenomena that resonates with gravity, meaning with the space curvature of the sphere, the surface of the sphere that is charged with all this electromagnetism, with all this polarity, right? With all this current, all this electricity because of the singularity at the epicenter, right? That is releasing all that energy and sustains the system. So the system keeps on spinning because of the electrogravitics, because it builds momentum. It just keeps going. As long as the system is being fed by a singularity, the system is just going to keep going. It's going to keep going, right? In the human case, as long as the heart keeps pumping, and what is it that makes the heartbeat go? Well, it's the systems are, once the system is life, so you sustain it by eating, by being alive, right? By sustaining it, having oxygen in your system, and all the different things that you do, so the heart just keeps going, right? So it keeps going and it keeps generating all the electrogravitics, the electricity, electric phenomena of the gravitational space curvature of the tension of the sphere, which is what generates gravity in the first place. Why? Because if you think about it at our scale, the terrestrial scale, so we are bound to the Earth, right? We're grounded by this gravity, right? 9.8. But where are we on the surface? So it's a tension on the surface, you see, because of the spin of planet Earth. The electromagnetic, because Earth is a spherical object. So essentially, it's the charges of the Earth that generates the electromagnetic field that creates this tension on the surface, right? Which is gravity, that we experience this as gravity because we're bound to it, right? And it's electric in nature, it's all sorts of charges. That's why there is, lining and all sorts of phenomena in the atmosphere because of all the charge of the electromagnetic field that leads to the gravitational, the gravitics, all these phenomena on the surface because of the tension of the sphere, the surface of the planet, because of the motion of it, right? So that's what electrogravitics is. Electrogravitics is all the phenomena that occurs as a result of the gravity, which is the tension on the space of the surface, the surface of the sphere, right? The surface of the sphere. All the gravitics, which is all the phenomena that is natural phenomena that occurs as a result of electromagnetism. Electrogravitics, so it's the electrical phenomena that occurs as a result of the gravity on the surface of the sphere, whatever sphere level, whatever scale. So this is what electrogravitics is. And what is it? Well, electrogravitics is this extremely useful, extremely practical, once you can master it and harness it, phenomena, because it is electrical in nature. It's energy, you see, it's energy, and it can be used to power things and do things, right? So if you understand this, the electric nature of electrogravitics, you got to understand what gravity is, because that's the interesting part of it, of gravitics, where what really does, this is the value of it for us in application. So because what is it, what does gravity do, right? Well, gravity bounds things to its own electromagnetic field, right? That creates the tension on the surface, so it pulls things into the gravity of it, right? Because of the electromagnetic, because it's magnetic. Gravity is magnetic as a result of polarity. So that magnetism, right? The tension on the surface is gravity. So that creates, and it's what keeps the structure together, so the singularity keeps feeding on itself within that, motion. So what is it that electrogravitics does? Well, electrogravitics is essentially our ability to tap into the electricity of gravity itself, the energy of the tension. And when you tap into the energy of the tension of the sphere, it cancels out, because you remember, when you tap, so it's, for example, like energy has different states, right? It's like for example, like, you know, when you heat things up, it's energy states, right? Like, you know, energy gets released in the way of, say, high temperature, say, for example, or electrical charges, right? So there's different states at which energy gets released, right? Because of the nature of energy and different states of energy. So when you start to tap into the energy of the tension of the surface, that is electrogravitics. So you're tapping into the energy of gravity, because remember, gravity is this phenomena that is magnetic in nature, that bounds things to its surface because of the tension of it. So it creates this, because it's pulling everything into a specific diameter, specific surface, spherical in nature. So it stays in there, and it stays in there is that tension. But when you start to understand what that tension is tension is energy, right? As a result of polarity, as a result of electromagnetism, it's the gravity, it's the tension on the surface. But when you start to tap into it and you release it, that is electrogravitics, because it's electrical energy. So you're releasing the tension on the gravity on the surface, which means by releasing it, you can use it now because you're tapping into that energy source, right? And remember, because it's changing states. So what's the natural state of gravity? Well, to create a gravitational pull, because of electromagnetism that creates the tension in the first place, that keeps things, you know, bound to it in a way. In our case, on Earth, the gravity that keeps us on the ground, the tension of the surface. But when you release the energy of gravity in an electrical current, power, energy, it cancels out that gravitational pull because you're releasing the energy. So it's a byproduct. So by releasing that energy, the electricity of it, by tapping into it and releasing it, then the gravitational effects of pulling it get canceled out. They get canceled out. So they, you know, gravity doesn't have this kind of like pulling effect anymore, because the energy is being converted into electricity, electrogravitics. So is the electricity that is released from the gravitational phenomena on the surface of spheres, particularly electromagnetic fields in this case, because of the singularity at the epicenter, the energy, right? So what does that mean? That if you have a singularity that is just going at it, then it's just this super powerful sphere of energy that is just being condensed there, and the energy is on the surface of the sphere, and it just goes like that until we cannot hold it anymore, because the space structure within that sphere has been filled, so it releases it. That's what the sun does. It releases all this light, all this energy, right? Because the energy on the surface of the sphere, right, the electrogravitics get released, right? Because the tension is so high that the electricity needs to get released, because the surface is being filled, all the energy that needs to be released, because it's too much. It's an infinite output of energy, because of the singularity, which is infinite energy in the way. So the energy gets released, right? And we can tap into that energy, right? Because we're harnessing that energy. So electrogravitics is that. Electrogravitics is the energy that results as a byproduct of tapping into the energy of gravity on the surface of the tension of the whatever sphere, spherical energy, electromagnetic field, anything. So you see, and it's very powerful, because the byproduct of you, first off, you're tapping into energy, number one, which is very high, because it's the energy of the space structure of the sphere. So it's very high energy because it's straight from the singularity, right? You're feeding off that singularity. So you're tapping into that energy, harnessing it. And by doing that, this byproduct of tapping into that energy is canceling out gravity, because the energy gets transformed, and by getting transformed into electrical current, energy, power sources, is releasing the tension. And by releasing the tension, the effects of it is that the pull of gravity gets canceled out as a byproduct. So by tapping into the energy, you're releasing the tension, which means the gravity of the system still generates, because it's a singularity at the epicenter. New energy gets released, right, from the singularity, from the poles, the original. But the energy that you're harnessing, as a result of getting that energy, you're also canceling out the gravitational forces that are bounding objects to it and magnetizing them into, grounding them into the tension of the surface of the sphere. So what is the value of this? Well, the value of this is that when you're doing two things. First off, you're tapping into an incredible amount of energy. And second of all, you're canceling out the gravity around the object. So there is no tension anymore bounding the object, say, to the ground or to the sphere itself. So what is incredible, because that creates all sorts of repulsion. Because we're not bound to the natural gravity of planet Earth anymore, 9.8. That needs all this huge propulsion and lift, right? Just so objects can get off the ground because of gravity. Because of all the draft and all the pressure in the atmosphere, right? That is, why is this pressure in the atmosphere in the first place? Because of gravity. Because gravity is, the electricity of it is keeping these pressure states in the way of temperature levels. Remember, because energy has different temperatures based on the way energy operates. Heat is a type of energy, right? So temperature is heat levels. So all these levels move around like this, like up and down in the atmosphere, which is what? This electromagnetic field that is holding all this tension on the surface of it, which is all this energy, right? All these different lining stuff, and which all these releases in the atmosphere, all these natural electrogravitics of planet Earth, right? The phenomena. But when we are conscious of what we're doing and understand the nature of it, by tapping into that energy, we tapping into the electricity of the electromagnetic field of it, the gravity on the surface of the sphere. And by tapping into the energy, then the gravity, which is the effect that pulls objects down and grounds them into them, keeps them grounded, gets canceled out. So gravity is not a factor anymore when it comes to that, because that energy that is pulling down is being released. What is holding you tight to it because of the tension on it, that's holding you because of the centrifugal nation of the movement of electromagnetism and polarity and charges, that energy that is holding you there because of the magnetism that is holding you against it in the first place, because of the gravity of it, the tension on the surface, starts to slowly get released by pulling into the electricity of it, harnessing that electricity from the tension of it. So when you can harness the electricity from the tension on it, then the byproduct is that the gravity, as being converted into energy, electricity, current, right, power generation, it eases the magnetism of it, the gravity of it on the surface of it, which means the space structure around it gets canceled out. And it tends to cancel out because everything in nature tends to be, that has to do with energy, tends to be spherical. So what it does, it cancels out the gravity around that specific object that's generating the energy and the singularity in the first place, when you start to maneuver and tap into the energy from the surface of it, the electricity generated. So by using electrogravitics means that you use that energy, and then as a result, the object that's generating the electromagnetism in the first place, the singularity at the epicenter of technology, generates a force field around it. So the electromagnetic field that creates it, right, because of polarity and all that, by tapping into that energy that gets released on the surface, you, at the same time, you're canceling out the gravity around that. And because it's an electromagnetic field that's spherical in nature, all over the sphere, the gravity gets canceled out as a result. So however large that electromagnetic field is that encompasses that spherical singularity, right? As a result of tapping into that electricity, electrogravitics, the energy of it, right? The byproduct is that as a result, it offsets, it cancels out the tension on the gravity of its own, meaning that you're not bound to the gravity of a bigger object pulling against it, because it gets canceled out of its own surface and all the surfaces that are near it. So it's almost like it levitates. But beyond that, it's essentially because of the energy, you're just maneuvering it. So you're moving it with the energy that it generates that is electric in nature. And with that energy, now you can move it because gravity is being canceled out, so it can move. And we can create systems around that so we can move it. And because remember, it has a surface, an electromagnetic field. So everything that is in the proximity of its electromagnetic field creates this canceled out field around it that essentially gravity doesn't has a hold of it anymore, because the energy that would otherwise hold it, bound it, is being used as an electrical charge. And that's electrogravitics. Okay, this is very important. It's a natural phenomenon. It's everywhere. So we see it everywhere on the surface of planets and our own planet and stuff. So, but what we can do is us as an intelligent species tap into that, the natural electrogravitics of electromagnetism and polarity of objects, particularly singularities that we're generating, right? That harness energy, like our own heart and the planet and stuff, right? All this stuff. So this is extremely important because it's a way to move around. Because remember, a lot of the problems that we encounter, say, to exit gravity, meaning to exit our surface and our lift, so we just take off and we outside our orbit is gravity. That's why all these rockets, these primitive technologies, need fuel, because they need a lot of thrust so they can actually do what? Not cancel it, really fight against gravity, because gravity is pulling against them, because they're not tapping into the electrogravitics of it, right? They're just going against it, really forcing it through. That's why you need so much energy just to lift up it, because you're fighting against the tension on the gravity of this planet that is holding you down, right? But when you have singularities and the electrogravitics, by tapping into that electricity, what you're doing is releasing the tension on the surface, because the gravity gets canceled out as a result. So it's a beautiful duality principle, because it's a virtuous cycle, because you don't have to waste all this energy and all these primitive fossil fuels to just go up, because you can use the same energy on the gravity on the surface of Earth, the tension on the surface of Earth, the space structure of Earth that has all this tension, and use that energy as your mechanism to power any gadget, any device. And at the time while you're powering it and taking the energy, then you're canceling out gravity, so it's just easy to move up. Boop. Without the tension, because the tension, you're being absorbing it because of the spherical nature of the device that is absorbing all that tension on the surface around you. Because the spherical nature of it is pulling into all that energy that is all the charges in the atmosphere and the tension on the surface, say if it's the Earth. So we're pulling into that gravity and using gravity as a source of energy. And what is that? Well, that's a space structure, space vacuum phenomena, right? Because by tapping into that energy, right, with singularity devices, by tapping into that energy, then the singularity, where is the singularity coming from in the first place? Well, from the tension of the sphere of the atmosphere, right, on the pressure, right, the space structure of it creating that tension, right? And by generating a singularity, what's the singularity is being fed, right, at the atmospheric level by the tension and the gravity around it. That energy gets released into what? The singularity itself. So you feed the system with the gravity around it. And by doing that, the electrogravitics come as a result, which is energy. So you use the energy and then you cancel out the gravity. So it's easy to move because you don't have the tension anymore. So you see the tension is becoming energy that you're mastering in the way of electricity. Electrogravitics. You see, it's the electricity that comes as a result of canceling out gravitational pull and forces. By using the tension and the energy of the surface of the planet in this case to be released in the way of a singularity, filling that vacuum through threshold space structure of space and vacuum structures of the fabric of our reality. And by doing that, by having these spherical devices that tap into that energy, or the energy of the gravity just generates this, because gravity is everywhere no matter what, right? So that energy would always be feeding the system. So gravity fits the system because instead of having the tension on the surface holding you back, that energy is channeled through the system and generates that singularity. And the result is electricity, electrogravitics, meaning electricity, power, energy that is sustainable, self-sustainable. And at the side effect is that because you're using that energy from gravity, then it cancels out the gravity around the object, meaning you don't have the gravity anymore holding you back, but you still have the energy from the gravity that you're canceling out. Because it's the energy is converting from gravity tension into electric tension, electric energy output that you can use to move around. So these objects are spherical in nature. And these used to be the spaceships that we used to move around. In the beginning, when we started to experiment as a species with them, because we were using the tension on the surface of the sphere, meaning our planet. But then we started to learn more and say, because it wasn't enough, because there's so much tension on the surface of the planet, so there's so much energy that you can harness. So you kind of like, once you leave the atmosphere, then the object kind of like, there's no more gravity to hold on to it anymore. So it kind of like, it's charged with the electricity that pulled out of the gravity and the cancellation of it, so it can be charged, but it's not enough energy. It's just enough to exit the gravity or to be on the surface or outside the orbit because then when you're on the orbit, then you can tap into the energy of the atmosphere, which is the same gravity that you're tapping into. So the device kind of uses that same energy, but this doesn't have the gravity holding it, so it just does it, right? It does. It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful technology because you're using gravity as a mechanism to power your device. The tension on the surface of the electromagnetic field of the planet Earth that leads to gravity is the energy that we're using to generate electricity and cancel out gravity as a result of using that free energy that's on the tension of the surface anyway, because of the electromagnetism of the planet just spinning because of its own weight and everything, it's amazing. So, but it's limiting. It has limits. It's just kind of like it bounces you to like near orbit if you don't have like a power source beyond it. So that's where, by understanding electrogravitics and the nature of singularities, then now you can use electrogravitics from singularities themselves. So you don't need to use the energy from the tension on the surface of the sphere of the planet to use that as your mechanism to get out of the surface. So what we use is spherical objects that themselves tap into the space structure of the filaments of our universe. And by doing that, then we're tapping into the energy of our central sun, infinity itself, and we generate an electromagnetic field out of a singularity. And this singularity is just infinite energy. And as a result of its spin, we can then use the infinite energy and the tension of that sphere of that singularity to power ourselves. So we move that, and that's the energy source. You see, the singularity creates the infinity of the energy that creates a tension on the surface of it, right? And then we release that energy, and then it cancels out the gravity of its own sphere. So it cancels out gravity around it, and it uses the energy from the tension of the sphere as a way to move. And it's infinite propulsion and infinite energy because it's the singularity from the space structure of the space and vacuum mechanics of tapping into singularity, because we're tapping into the energy that is in space itself, rather than using the gravity from planet Earth. But these are levels of evolution. We first start by tapping into the tension on the surface of planet Earth and using that as a mechanism. That gravity becomes the electricity that cancels out the energy around the field of the object that we're moving, and then with that gravity becomes the source of energy, and then that's how you can move around. All right. But that's limiting because once you exit the surface, then there's no more gravity, and then the device kind of like loses momentum and loses energy source, unless it has a singularity device in it that powers it outside the atmosphere. So it's its own energy tapping into the filaments of space and vacuum structures of infinity, which is the tension on the surface of the universe, that is created by the electromagnetic energy that's generated from the singularity of the central sun. And where are we? Where we happen to be located at the epicenter of the central sun of this universe. So it's very easy. You see, we're very close to this charge everywhere. So we can just tap into that release very quickly, and it's not that hard to have an electromagnetic, field generated out of a singularity that then allows us to propose ourselves, propulsion and all sorts. Infinite energy, because the singularity is tapping into the energy of the tension on the surface of the universe. So it's like a singularity that's powering this device because of the tension on the surface. You see, because we're using the energy and the tension of the surface, the space of the universe, space and vacuum structures, and that energy is what fits the singularity. And because we're fitting the singularity, then that singularity has an electromagnetic field, right? And then there's a tension on that, and by releasing the tension on that surface of that singularity, then that cancels out the gravity, so we can move a lot faster, and we use that energy, which is infinite energy, that is getting canceled out because of electrogravitics. So this is beautiful. You see, it's a virtuous cycle. Okay, so that's the first element. So that's what electrogravitics is. Okay, that's what electrogravitics is. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful. But then there's telemetry, right? Telemetry is the other one. So what's telemetry? Well, telemetry is the readings, right? All the readings that, because when there is energy, there is a charge. And when there is a charge, there is a reading, because there is energy loads, right? And energy can be measured. Energy can be measured. Energy can be read. If you have the instruments, you can measure and read energy. You can, because that's just the way energy is. Energy is just, it can be measured because it's real. It exists, right? It's like the energy from the sun. You can see it even. So with our eyes, we can see, right? The sun is right there. We see it. So, but energy can be measured. Right? And the measurements of energy is what we call readings. So telemetry are the readings of electrogravitics. So telemetry is the readings. Why? Because telemetry is what? Spherical in nature, because what's telemetry? Metric, right? Reading, a meter. So we're reading is measurement. But of what? Right? Telemetry is the telecommunication, is the communication. The telemetry is reading the communication. What communication? The signs and signals, the current generated on the tension of the sphere, because it's geometry, right? The sphere is geometrical in nature, so the tension of it has readings. All these energies there's a signal attached to is measurements, so we can, and the scales and all sorts, so we can measure and read the energy coming out of what? The tension on the surface of a sphere, that gives us electrogravitics in the first place, so we can have propulsion and singularities. Okay, so you see, this is two principles of nature. One comes out of it. Telemetry comes out of what? Electrogravitics. And where does electrogravity come from? From electromagnetism. Right? Because electromagnetism is the result of polarity, charge, of what? The gravity generated on the tension of the sphere as a result of the electromagnetism of it. That, because magnetism is the magnetism of the two polarities coming together as one and generating that motion, because of the force field interacting, that goes like this and goes like this, and that generates electricity. It's electricity, electromagnetism, the magnetism of electricity, and that is the gravity on the tension of the surface. So when you release the tension on the surface of the gravity, then that becomes electrogravitic. So it's the next level. So charge leads to polarity, polarity leads to electromagnetism, electromagnetism leads to motion, right? It's the motion of the singularity, and that leads to electrogravitics, which to gravity, and the gravity leads to electrogravitics, and electrogravitics leads to telemetry, which is the readings of the energy that we're using. The energy, right, from the surface and the tension of the spheres of all these objects. Because if we're manufacturing the spherical devices that have singularities at the epicenter, because we're tapping into the space vacuum structure of the universe, the filaments of it, right, just mimicking the central sun, so that generates the vacuum spherical vacuum threshold that is filled by the tension on the surface of space. So because it's the gravity of the universe, so that space curvature, right, gets released into what? The spherical vacuum threshold that generates the singularity at the epicenter of the device. And when that happens, then the energy comes as a result of what? Because by creating that spherical vacuum threshold, then the energy creates a momentum, so the polarity starts to be channeled by that because it's a spherical object, and by being spherical, it has polarity, right? And that's the gravity of it kind of like takes a whole new level of, because you're channeling that gravity into the epicenter of it in the way of a singularity. And that energy gets fed and it's a system, and then it generates electromagnetism of the polarity of it because of the singularity. And that system is self-sustainable to infinity because we're tapping into the tension of the surface of the energy of the sphere of the universe, which is created by the energy of the singularity of our central sun. That itself exists because of the energy of the tension of the universe that is bigger, that got released into that singularity because of the tension of the electromagnetic field that got released and created as a result of it. So you see, so these infinite cycles of scales of spherical energy in singularities. But we're just tapping into like a smaller version of it that we can contain within a device that can have the materials and the properties, so it can sustain itself and that energy load. So the singularity doesn't stop because the materials get disintegrated. So we have good quality materials like gold and diamonds and things like that, the great conductors. So the energy gets contained within them and then just keeps on generating more energy. So we can harness that energy, and then it leads to electrogravitics, so we can move around it, right? All sorts. And then the telemetry is the readings of it. And why are the readings important? Because the readings allow us to do all sorts. Because once you understand the measurement of energy, then you can power all sorts of devices and all sorts of systems and circuitry as a result of having telemetry. Because the telemetry is there to give us indications of the system, the stability of the system, how stable is the singularity, the device. Because if the device is very stable and it's a very strong singularity that doesn't have any points of failure, right, because of the materials and everything, the engineering and the design is flawless, then the telemetry will be constant. So it's constant telemetry. The readings are always constant because the energy is constant. So that allows us to what? Well, to be able to tap devices or any equipment or machinery that needs to be powered by energy sources. And we can read the energy coming of it that powers each of those devices, right? And that's why the telemetry is so useful, because then we can measure the energy that's feeding into each of the equipments and devices as a result of the electrogravitics of the singularity device. That it's incredible. Okay, this is just incredible technology. So and it's very useful, right? Because it's free energy, and because of the nature of telemetry and electrogravitics, if it's well done, there's no need for connectivity, meaning like AC or DC. You don't need to interface, because just by being in the proximity of the electromagnetic field of the device, right, the tension on the sphere that is being canceled out, and the release, you see the energy that gets released powers the device in the proximity of the electromagnetic field immediately, without having to have conversions, current conversions or anything, because of electrogravitics. And that's the power of telemetry, because telemetry is what allows us to know the amount of energy, the readings that are being released through this device, so we can know how the devices could have essentially we can just build up a cluster of devices that need high energy inputs to be powered to sustain the system because of the telemetry. The telemetry allows us to do the readings of it. And this is extremely useful because it's spherical in nature, so we have an infinite number of points in a sphere, right? Because it's a singularity and it has a tension on it. So it's spherical, and the sphere has an infinite number of points in it, which means it has an infinite number of points of reading. So we can use these readings for all sorts. because that energy is measurable. And once you can measure energy, then you do all sorts with it, right? Because you're mastering it, you control it, you can do everything that you pretty much want to do with it. Right. Right. And that's exactly what we used to do. So we used to have spherical technology, and with that technology, we just move around the universe before we evolved, which is even bigger. But because we're just regaining access to our DNA structures, our memory pools, our DNA memories, we have to kind of like relearn everything again. So the first step is singularity devices and the electrogravities that come as a result of the space and vacuum interactions, because of the spherical vacuum threshold, sets of 64 that come together in a spherical object that gets filled, and that leads to the gravity coming into the object from the space and space structure or universe. That tension that gets released into it, and that is the energy that generates the singularity that leads to electromagnetism, polarity, and electrogravitics, and then the telemetry of it. So with the telemetry, we can create systems to distribute that energy if it needs to be, or do all sorts, because it's the energy, the measurements, right? And also, super important, with the energy from telemetry, that's essentially where you can, like in the past, what we used to do is like we would just go instantly to any point in the universe. We are spherical spaceships. And the reason why we were able to do that is because we could read the tension on the sphere of the universe, because we were connected because of the electrogravitics of our devices, the filaments. So with the telemetry, it's not only the telemetry of your device, it's the telemetry of everything that has electrogravitics in them, which is everything. So we can use telemetry to read anything, meaning we can find specific coordinates, vectors, in space structures, and then what we do, we tap into that energy and we just go to that location instantly without having to travel and spend time traveling, because those could be very long distances, say a different galaxy. So how do you get to a different galaxy through space? It would take a long time, right? Even if you cancel out gravity, because in space there's no such thing as a pulling of gravity, so it's just using the propulsion, right? But then again, it's not efficient because it's too slow because of the vast distances. So telemetry is essentially finding the signals of energy across the universe. And how can we find it? Because we have the energy from our own singularity that allows us to tap into the space structure that is feeding it in the first place. So because the space structure of the universe is feeding the singularity in the first place, because we have the spherical vacuum threshold being met by having the energy already created, so we got the energy source already down. So but we need to get to that location. So because we got telemetry, the telemetry can give specific coordinates of the space structure of that specific location in the universe, because it's a reading of energy, and it tends to be in the way of pulses, like say for example nearby star systems and the filaments of them, or planets. So you see, it's a signal, is a reading of what the electrogravitics around that specific telemetry, meaning that specific point, that vector in space that we want to go to. So telemetry is useful for that, because now that we have infinite energy in the singularities, that allows us to move anywhere with an infinite energy source and have an electromagnetic field around us, protecting us from all sorts, because it's electrogravitic in nature. It cancels out gravity, and it creates an electromagnetic field that we can breathe in it, sustain our bodies, right, in it. Right. So because we're tapping into the vacuum, right, spherical vacuum threshold that allows for the singularity to emerge, then that means that we're tapping into the energy of the universe, the space structure of the universe itself, so we can read it as a result, right, of tapping into it, right? We're listening, essentially. It's like listening. So telemetry is listening to the space structure of the tension on the surface of the universe. And the reason why we can do it is because of just like the byproduct of electrogravitics, you use the energy of the tension of the sphere so you can move around by canceling out gravity around you as a result of using that energy, by converting that energy into power. So the gravity gets canceled into electricity so you can move. So it's the same with telemetry. Telemetry is the same because you can read the telemetry of whatever is feeding your energy. So because the energy that we're being fed of comes from the tension on the surface of the universe, from the electromagnetic field of the universe, which comes from the singularity at the epicenter of our universe, which is our central sun, that means that the reading, we have a total reading, a full reading of the whole universe. And so we can listen, right? We can listen to the telemetry of the tension of the spheres of all the points and coordinates in the universe. Because we're tapping into the fabric of the universe. And that's what telemetry is. And the reason why we can power it is because the source of it is the energy from the tension on the surface of the universe, which is everything that encompasses the universe. So by proxy, as a result of it, the telemetry is not only the telemetry of the object that we're generating or the objects that we're powering with it, but the telemetry of the entire universe. Because we're tapping that energy. That's the energy that we're harnessing. The energy on the tension of the surface of the sphere of the electromagnetic field of the universe. That is the energy, that the tension that comes from the singularity, that creates the singularity of the central sun of the universe in the first place. So by doing that, then we have the telemetry of the entire universe, meaning we have the whole readings, the listening of the whole, meaning all the pulses, all the vectors, all the coordinates in the space structure of the universe, all the locations. So by having that, what does it do? Well, because we have an infinite energy propulsion now, because we're tapping into the infinite energy of creation itself, we can use that telemetry and map it. So we map the filament. So we map the location, the coordinate, and then once we connect it, it's just instant transportation, because we're canceling out gravity, so we're not going to get any of the side effects and any of the feedback. So what it means, we teleport immediately there at the same time. So we're not going to be there in a million years. It feels instant, but then we get there in a million years and everything changed. No, because this Newtonian physics is all based on misunderstandings of the nature of space and vacuum structures and singularities. So we can get there in real time, instantly, at the speed of the cosmos, because we're tapping into the telemetry and the energy of the tension of the surface. And because we're canceling out the gravity because of electrogravitics, we don't suffer the consequences of transportation at that speed, because our bodies are contained within the sphere that cancels out the gravity in the first place, which is that's powering the object that we're moving us around. That's why our spaceships are spherical in nature, because we're within the space structure of the sphere that cancels out the gravitational pull or the tension of space and vacuum, which means the electrogravitics and the telemetry allows us to go anywhere we want. And what we used to do, we encoded all these technologies in our DNA so we can power the spherical spaceships with our thoughts. So everything was just, our thoughts would just get us there. So we just by thinking about the location, the system will map it out and generate the route, and just in instant, it's like quantum entanglement. Life is instant. Boop, boop, we just get there immediately. No side effects, nothing, because we're just using the tension on the surface of the sphere, the telemetry. Because we have infinite energy now, we have an infinite energy output just to transport ourselves there. And we don't suffer the consequences of that speed of movement because of the electrogravitics, because we're canceling out the gravity around it. So when we get there, just by getting there and the arrival, no, it's just like smooth transition. Literally, it's just like being here, new state, and then we're just there. Okay, so you see, it's this infinite virtuous cycle of electrogravitics and telemetry, which is part of our, it's encoded, I know this because it's encoded in our DNA. because we used to build these spaceships in the past. But they became obsolete because when we evolved, after we built planet Earth, before our DNA went dormant, because of what happened, all the calamities that happened, that I spoke about many times in the past. So what we used to do, we just use our spaceships, right, to support our bodies and all that outside our planets and our atmosphere. So we just move in our spaceships. And because we had infinite energy, what we would do, this is the beauty of telemetry, because remember, telemetry reads the space structure of the universe. If you're tapping into a singularity that is feeding from the tension on the surface of the electromagnetic field of the universe, which is the energy that feeds the central sun of our universe in the first way, you see. So essentially you have a mini central sun that you're using to move around, right? So the beauty of that, because of that telemetry, now we can read coordinates in the space and vacuum structure of infinity, of our universe, of the surface of it. So we can find remember, a surface has an infinite number of locations in it, right? Because that's just spheres are infinite in nature. That's why we have infinite energy out of singularities, because of the tension on the sphere of it. So then the universe is spherical in nature. So essentially what happens is that we could find, say for example, this is how we used to create galaxies. So how we used to make galaxies, so it was because we had an infinite energy output, right, from the singularities powering our spaceships. Literally, because we were tapping into the infinite energy of the cosmos, of the tension of the sphere of the universe. That is the energy that is feeding the singularity, that's releasing all the energy at the epicenter that creates all the galaxies in the first place. That's the energy that gets released from the tension, the singularity, the own electrogravitics of the tension on the surface of the sphere. That energy gets converted into what? Light. And it creates galaxies as a result, right? Electrogravitics. Because the tension on the surface of the sphere is released, and that gravity that gets released is the energy that converts into light. And then that creates galaxies and fills out the space vacuum structure of the sphere itself, the electromagnetic field of the universe. That is the one that's generating the energy to power the central sun of our universe. So you see, it's incredible. So essentially, when you understand these, right, and we did as a species, and we do now as well, because I said we can tap into our DNA now and remember what we used to do and recreate all these technologies. So what we would do is, like, because we had an infinite energy source, right, spaceships. All of our spaceships were commanded by our thoughts, interfacing with our thoughts, and each individual, each human would have a spaceship of these. Each and one of us, if you're a citizen of the Republic of Planet Earth, moving forward in not so distant future, that could happen very soon, each of us will be able to have a spherical spaceship just like that one, with an infinite energy source within them, right, to move around space and time, as we call space and time. But it's just space curvature, really, the universe, because there's no time. Time is relative to your level of perception, okay? And from that point of view, because that notion of space-time, that's just an incorrect notion, just like the black holes and the Big Bang. All these notions are based on misunderstandings of the space structure of infinity because of incomplete physics, right? Because they're not spherical in nature, they just like abstract stuff, eh? They don't understand what gravity really is and what singularities are and what creates singularities and the space structure and space vacuums. They don't understand them. So that's why they just lead to all these, the renormalization and all these notions that, singularities are these crazy numbers that you don't want to see in mathematics, because they just creep out and they don't know how to explain them, and they start to create fake things like weak force and strong force and all this stuff. That's nonsense. Because the only two forces in existence, if you want to think about it realistically, is gravity and electromagnetism, and they all originate from the same source, which is a singularity. And electrogravitics is the applicable side, the applied science of it. So essentially, and telemetry is a result of the applicable, because you need to read the science, right? And telemetry is that we read the science with telemetry. And the science is electrogravitics, okay? So the whole science is electrogravitics because of electromagnetism and polarity and charge and all that, and singularities and stuff. So we were masters of this, you see, with space and vacuum masters. So what we would do, we would find, that's how we would move, right? With telemetry, we just would move anywhere immediately, boom, teleport immediately anywhere, doesn't matter in the universe. As long as within the universe, we would use it because we were tapping into the telemetry of the readings of the tension of the spheres of the universe, so we would know all the locations, all the coordinates, all the vectors. Okay, just by proxy, because we would have access to the energy of the universe itself. So that by having access to that, we could just map out the entire map of it. It's the entire structure. Okay, so what we would do is, like, because we were making galaxies, right, creating galaxies, so what we would do is we'll find a specific point in the universe where we could meet the spherical threshold, vacuum thresholds, to generate a singularity that would form into a galaxy. Okay, so that's what we would do. So we would, when we wanted to create a galaxy or something, what we would do is we would find that specific point on the tension of the surface of the sphere that meet the requirements for a spherical vacuum threshold to be met. So then what we would do, we would go there with the spaceships, with our thoughts interfacing, and we just move there. And once we arrive there, we can just generate the singularity by tapping into that spherical vacuum threshold and releasing the energy from the tension of the sphere, and then it generates that first sun. And we would just observe how that first sun first originated in a galaxy and the whole process. And we will study it and read the telemetry of it and learn, right? Learn everything about it. Because our species became that. We became essentially masters of these. So you see, it's this infinite, you see, and it leads to infinity, because eventually, after an infinite number of cycles, we realized that we wanted more, because galaxies were kind of boring. You know, it sounds great, boring, like making galaxies, creating galaxies, but that's how the level of our species where we were. We were on that level of creation where we would just make galaxies, create galaxies, and move anywhere in the universe in our spherical spaceships. That was a civilization, and each human would have one of these that would be interfacing with their DNA, with their consciousness. It was like the personal assistant, intelligent, sentient devices that would be able to assist us, because remember, they also have infinite energy themselves. So by us thinking about anything, we would manifest it by tapping into the space structure and building it almost like a 3D printer with a thought. So we would just print the structure of it, whatever structure we needed, any object, anything, just build it from the energy of the vacuum. But the singularity, we just do that. So you see, very advanced. And each human would have that. So part of the Republic of Planet Earth is we're gonna reclaim all these freedoms. So because as we start to love more with the energy of creation, you see, because you cannot have these technologies unless you love, because then you can use these technologies for bad things. That's why love is the key that unlocks your DNA structure. So it has to be love. It's love, the energy that allows our DNA to essentially manifest our spherical spaceship as each of the citizens of the Republic of Planet Earth. So if you love with the energy of your heart, then each of one of us would have their own light spherical spaceship, because it's part of creation. No matter who you are, it doesn't matter who you are. As long as you love with all the energy of your heart, you will be able to manifest that, because you're tapping into your DNA memory, because it's already encoded in our DNA. So because of your structure, you will be able to manifest your light spherical spaceship as the first step that would allow us to do what? Build the planets that we need to build, so we can populate the epicenters of the central suns of all the universes that we have already created, that are waiting for us. You see? And that's what the Republic of Planet Earth is precisely this. Is our ability to regain access to our old tech, because as we start to move into new levels, eventually those spherical technologies, we won't require them anymore, because we will go back to what we used to, which is just create everything with 1,000 consciousness again, because we would be able to love at that level and that scale. But in order for us to get there, we first need to reclaim all our heritage and legacy technology from the past. And the way we do that, that's the first step, right? And that's light spherical technology that interfaces with us, and it's like an assistant that helps us in any way, shape, or form, because it's tapping into the energy of creation itself and all our memory pools of our DNA memories, because it's a bank of memories of infinity. So we can tap into all that, and we can relive memories from specific times in the past and even the future. Because of telemetry, right? We can read the telemetry of the future if we have enough energy to understand the impact of our actions today and the consequences, and map them out and go to the future if we need to, instantly, or to the past, or just in the here and now, moving around the universe or any of the universes that we have created. Because this universe exists and they're the same density, now we can have the telemetry readings of all the universes that we have created and go instantly there. Not only this original universe, but all the ones that we have created with our conscious and thoughts in the past. So now we can go there as well with our light spherical spaceships. Because of the density structure, we can, and because of the filaments of the universe, and they're all connected to our own, we are the epicenter, so we can go anywhere. Because the telemetry of our sun already, and everything, and this structure of this universe, because of the filaments of the central suns that we created, all these suns are integrated to our own DNA and everything. So our spaceships can allow us to go anywhere instantly in any of the creations that we have ever built and made, created. And as we start to learn and tap into our DNA, so we learn, right? We go back to the past, we go to the future with the memories, and we start to understand everything and remember and remember and remember and remember, then we will get to that level again. But we need to love, because love is the energy that allows us to have that level of consciousness and self-awareness to be able to tap into, to manifest our spaceships again and exit the orbit, right, that we're bound to right now because of primitive tech, because we cannot do it, because we don't have access to our tech right now, because we are slowly getting there, because we love him with our hearts and our energy of creation, so we are tapping it. So don't be surprised if in any second we would start seeing our light spherical spaceships showing up, and humans like us just, within them, inside of them, with the thoughts and consciousness, moving around. They could be from the past, or they could be from the future, or from this time, humans like us that just tapped into the tech and they were just able to remanifest it and use it. This is the next step, and this is going to happen anytime now, anytime, and this cannot be stopped, because this is our destiny, this is who we are, this is our DNA structure, this is our time, this is the time we as a species get to this. And you see, this is the infinite virtuous cycle of the electrogravitics and telemetry, which is all encoded in our DNA. So this is why we can do this, because everything is within us already. It's this infinite cycle, you see, of telemetry and electrogravitics that allow us to do anything, because we have evolved into these abilities, because we're the central sun of our universe and all the universes that we have created with our thoughts and consciousness in the past, that we still have access to. And as we start to develop ourselves again and love more, and we learn more about our DNA and our nature, because it's infinite in nature, we will be able to stop. We won't need the spherical technologies themselves, because we are them, and we will ourselves as our bodies just teleport and do it ourselves and keep on creating as we used to in the past. But it takes time to get there, because of our density, because of our consciousness, because of the amount of love that we can generate at our singularity. So the more we love is practice, right? That's why the exercises I'm putting out there are fundamental, because these are the exercises that allow us to love to infinity, which were the exercises that allow me to get to this level already. So you see, so this is our future as a species, because the future is ours. We own it, because we are the identity and true self, or DNA structure is our makeup, is who we are, and we are the infinity of biology. So all these creations, remember the previous video, Story of Humanity, DNA memory, right? And the results that everything has led to this moment. But the actions that we're taking now are already having a huge impact in the future, because the past already happened. But what we can do is go to the past and learn from everything that has happened, if we wanted to, by reliving these memories and kind of like watching them as they happen, so we understood what happened, and then learn in the here and now and create. That would have a huge impact in the future, because the past is the past, can be changed, but the future happens here and now, and the decisions that we made in the past and here now are having a huge impact in the future. So we can go to the future and see our impacts as we start to move further into our understanding of our own DNA structure, because our third primary element is time and energy. And we have an infinite DNA memory, so we can go anywhere into the future infinitely and see who we are. Because as I said, the Republic of Planet Earth already is a big thing in the future because of what I'm saying, our DNA. Because we unlocked it of what we used to be and who we are, and that's why it just mapped out the future the way it is, which is essentially us remanufacturing our spaceship planets just like Earth with the spherical technology, so we can inhabit the epicenters of the central suns of all the universes that we have created and we will create into the future. Because that's where our space density is. Our space structure density is the habitat of our species, is the central suns of universes. Because of the own electrogravitics of our own spherical electromagnetic field, right? Because we ourselves realize spherical energy, so we ourselves have our own electrogravitics and our own telemetry, right? This is what allows us to teleport with energy, infinite energy, wherever we want in the universe, anyway. Right? What we used to do in the past. Not only our universe, any universe. Right? Because of our nature. Into the future, into the past, in the present, just anywhere, anytime. Infinite energy anywhere. Because this is who we are. And you see, this is the infinite virtuous cycle of electrogravitics and telemetry as one. They come together and they just one. They become one because of the nature of it. It's just the nature of infinity. Who we are. The Republic of Planet Earth. Humanity, I love you with all my heart, with all my mind. Okay, so remember, this is the infinite virtuous cycles of infinity, right? In the way of electrogravitics of infinity and the telemetry of infinity as one. This beautiful virtuous cycle that comes as a result of one feeding the other one into infinity. And they just go like that and reinforce themselves to infinity. And because of understanding these principles of electrogravitics and telemetry, that's what allows us in the first place to get here in the first place and make galaxies and evolve, create spaceship planet Earth, and move around the cosmos the way we did and encode everything in our DNA. Because of who we are. We are an incredible species. We truly are. We are a remarkable species. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. Remember, we're a benevolent species. This is our nature. We're a loving species, a heart-based species, a loving species, a love-based species, a heartful species. This is our nature. We live to love and we love to live. This is who we are as a species. The purpose of our species is to love, because love is the highest energy of the human heart, so we can create infinities, because this is who our nature is, our makeup, is who we are as a species, is truly who we are. This is our nature. It really is our nature. It really is. We live to love and we love to live lives of meaning, lives of purpose. The purpose of life is a life of purpose, a meaningful life, a life of creation, because of our elements. Because then, just like electrogravitics and telemetry, there's also these infinite, virtuous cycles of compass and sandal, heritage and legacy, creation and creator. I've been talking about all these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful dynamics that lead into infinity. Because this is the beauty of it, right? The beauty of it is that everything is infinite in nature. So when you understand these and duality principles, then you yourself understand our nature of infinity as compass, identity, and true self. So we manifest our free will. You see, we create all these primary elements because we manifest our free will with a consciousness and self-awareness, identity and true self, purpose, time and energy, action, why, how, flow, true north, and destination. Because it's just who we are. This is our DNA. This is who we are. This is our species. This is our heritage and our legacy. This is our nature. The nature of our civilization is precisely that. Is to get to this moment and into the future, and keep on creating to infinity because of who we are, because of our beautiful nature, because of how amazing we are as a species, because of everything that we've gone through in the past, and everything that we are going through now has led to this moment, the singularity of the here and now as a species, so we can move into the future in the most incredible and spectacular of ways. So remember, light spherical technology, spherical spaceships that are almighty, and they're ours because they're encoded in our DNA. So we just need to love with all our hearts and all our minds. So we start to see them happening, or these we have to get our memory download, so we start to be able to understand our nature and love as a mechanism, so we can do what we've always done, to create infinitely, because you see, we are the biology of infinity. So I'm going to read a few things, and then that will be the video. Okay, so human DNA, the body, the organs, the glands, infinity. Love is the highest energy of creation, and we are the biological expression of that. We are the highest energy of creation, and we are the human heart. Love is the flow of infinity. Love is the highest energy of creation. Love, consciousness, self-awareness, infinite love. You see, infinite eternal biology, evolution, singularities of all organs and glands, the resonance, we're energy from the sun. This is who we are with the human race. Okay, we're the human race. So no fear, infinite love, right? That's it. That's the mechanism. Go for gold and diamonds. Do it all in, here and now. Follow your heart, signs and signals. Okay, we're sentient. We love, we're emotions, we're feelings. This is who we are. Love equals evolution. When we love, we evolve, which is we tap into our space structure of our DNA and understand who we are in nature as infinite eternal creators or co-creators of infinite eternities. This is who we are. We live to love and we love to live. We're co-creators of infinite eternities. This is our nature. Love is infinity, you know, it's a virtuous cycle, beautiful cycle of compass and sundial. You know, we open our eyes, we open our hearts, open our minds, and stare at the sun. When we do, we open the portal and build the bridge, and we get the energy for infinity that we need to learn how to love more, so we can tap into our DNA structures, right? Because this is our story, the story of humanity. Compass and sandal, heritage and legacy. Okay, love is life. Life and love, they come from the same place, the human heart. Life is creation, and creation is energy. Love is the energy of creation. Maturity, that's maturity. You see our humility. Love is energy. Love is life, you see. This is precisely who we are. Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my might. I love you all with all my heart, with all my might. Remember who we are, with the citizens of the Republic of Planet Earth, with the citizenry of the Republic of Planet Earth, with the leaders of the Republic of Planet Earth, with the defenders of the Republic of Planet Earth. This is precisely who we are with the human race. Benevolent species, a loving species, a heart-based species, a love-based species, a heartful species. We live to love and we love to live. Beautiful lives, lives of purpose, lives of meaning. Purpose of life is a life of purpose. Meaningful lives, happy lives, extremely beautiful lives. Creating love is the highest energy of creation. I love you all with all my heart, with all my might.